Hello friends, it's Mal with Made by MANIANDMAL. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome. I am so happy that you found our channel. In today's video, we're going to be making a vinyl wrap tumbler, but we're going to be doing the wrap on a skinny mug. So I'm going to show you how I wrap vinyl around cups that have a handle on them. And this is going to be kind of a just very simple, basic, really hopefully helpful tutorial. Not doing anything super revolutionary by any means, but I did want to share my technique for getting that vinyl to wrap around a handled cup. I hope that you enjoy, and I hope this helps you in your vinyl wrapping adventures. If you enjoy the video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you are not already. We upload brand new videos every single Tuesday and Saturday. Everything I'm using will be linked down in the description box below, along with some discount codes for you as well. So I think that's all. Let's go.
We're starting with a fully prepped and sanded 20-ounce skinny mug from Craft Haven, of course, and I really want to go into detail for wrapping mugs with vinyl. I know it's hard enough to wrap a regular cup with vinyl, and I wanted to just show you guys how I do cups that have handles. So I wanted to do kind of a half and half split with this wood and butterfly pattern, but it's not going to be an even 50-50. I want the wood part of the vinyl to come up right up to the bottom of that handle, and then we'll wrap the butterfly vinyl around the rest. So I'm going to start with the bottom because that's technically like the easy part. So I'm just going to measure or test it, I guess, to make sure that it's going to wrap around the right way. I'm testing all of the sizing, making sure everything's going to line up properly, and then I'll cut my vinyl down to make sure that we won't waste all of that extra vinyl. So what I'm doing here is just making sure everything is going to line up properly, and then I'm going to take my pencil and mark off the bottom where I want to trim off all that excess. I'm leaving a little bit of extra room at the bottom just so we give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room, and I am going to finish the bottoms how I typically would. So I want a little bit of extra vinyl for that. So here I am testing it again. I test this a million times because I want to make sure that it's going to line up and be clean, because if this bottom part isn't aligned properly, we're going to have a little bit more of a struggle when we go up to do the top portion. So I'm really making sure that this is correct. I want my seam to line up with my handle, so I'm going to start my wrap there. And to make sure that I have a straight line, what I've started doing with all my vinyl wraps is holding my ruler on the table, standing up with my cup, and then drawing a straight line using my ruler as a guide with a pencil so that I have a line for where I want my vinyl to line up with. So I'm going to take the end of my vinyl and line it up right with that line that I drew on the cup. This just makes sure that my eyeballing isn't incorrect, because sometimes things will look straight at a certain angle and they're not always perfectly straight. So I have started just taking that extra step to make sure things are straight. So I'm going to anchor down that 1 little inch of the vinyl onto my cup and then test it again, make sure that it's going to wrap around straight, and then I will start to apply my vinyl how I normally do. So I'm going to slowly push back the backing and smooth the vinyl onto the cup with my thumb. And as you can see, I'm holding the cup steady in my left hand and then using my right hand to smooth the vinyl onto the cup. This is just the easiest way for me to do it, especially with these little vinyl wraps, not the full cup. So what I've also started doing is cutting off the backing kind of halfway through the process, because it's less bulk to deal with. It's just a little bit easier to get things wrapped and easy when you don't have that huge piece of backing like flailing around. So then once I've got the full wrap done, I'm going to pull the rest of the backing off and lay down the edge of the vinyl. And then I'm just going to cut off any excess. I'm not really worried about overlap here. You can't really see where the overlap is with this dark vinyl. I just cut off a little bit just to help it line up a little bit more. And then I'm going to trim off any excess that might be up onto that handle. There was just a tiny little sliver, and I just took my craft knife and trimmed it off and then peeled off that excess. As you can, it's just a really tiny little piece. And then for the bottom, like I said, just going to finish it how I normally would. So I'm pulling up that excess vinyl as tight as I can over the bottom of the cup, and then I'm trimming off any of the excess that's kind of bunched up around. I'm really looking for just a smooth surface curving onto the bottom of the cup so that when we finish it, it looks kind of flush and seamless. So what I just did was do that same trick with my ruler. So I drew a straight line up at the top of the cup so that I can align the second piece of vinyl correctly. And then I'm wrapping my vinyl around the cup to mark off where I'm going to trim. So I trimmed it in half, and then I'm trimming off all of the little white border edges. So we're just left with a clean patterned sheet of vinyl. And I'm going to start this on the side where I'm going to like deal with the handle last. So I've got my vinyl up against the handle, and I'm going to wrap it all the way around the cup and then deal with the handle at the end. So I taped off my wooden vinyl that we laid down at the bottom, and I'm going to have a little tiny little bit of overlap onto that wooden vinyl, and I'm going to use the tape as a guide to help me trim off any of that excess. So I'm cutting off a little piece of the backing so I have a tiny sliver of this butterfly vinyl exposed, and I'm going to line it up with the pencil line that I drew onto my cup. Really take your time with this. You want to make sure that it's straight. And I'm going to smooth the vinyl onto the cup the exact same way that I did with the bottom. Make sure that you take your time with this. You want to keep everything straight and smooth and avoid any bubbles. This footage is not sped up, so you can see kind of how slow I'm going. I'm going to speed it up in a second, but just really take your time and make sure that you're doing this properly. So as you can see, again, I'm cutting off the backing kind of midway through just to make it a little bit easier for me to wrap. And then once I get to the handle part, what I'm going to do is take my pencil and hold that vinyl up against the handles and just make little marks for where I'm going to cut a little slit in the vinyl to work around that handle. You can also, if you want to just avoid the pencil part, you can just take your scissors and kind of line it up with the handle and slice right away. I just wanted to make sure that I was cutting correctly. So after that, I took my X-Acto knife and I just made a little slit like where the handle meets the vinyl. So just to give me a little bit more of an idea of where to cut. And then I'm testing it, just checking to make sure that I'm right. And then I first took my scissors and tried to like do it in the middle. And then I was like, what am I doing? I just sliced the whole thing. So you don't have to do that part. And here I am just cutting off excess. It was in my way. So what I'm going to do now is actually what you should do. So I'm taking my scissors and I'm slicing that entire piece up until where I made those little slits with my X-Acto knife. So I'm left with 3 little like slivers of vinyl. So one's going to go at the top, one's going to go at the bottom, and then the other middle piece is going to slide through underneath the handle. And I'm going to trim off, I had a little bit of a thick piece at the bottom, so I just am making sure that that's going to line up right, and then I'll trim off that little excess piece. So then what I'm going to do is test and make sure everything is lined up right. And as you can see, I've got a little bit of gap from where I cut that little chunk off. This pattern is kind of easy to patch up and fix. If you have a busier pattern, it might be a little bit more difficult to hide those kinds of little mistakes, but it can be done. So don't feel like if you mess up or you get a little gap somewhere, don't feel like you can't fix it, because you can just cut a little piece and kind of stretch your vinyl out and it'll all be okay. So I laid down that first piece. I'm cutting off a little excess that was up over that handle. That's another thing you can do if you don't want to cut a big chunk out like I did on this bottom piece. You can just lay that big piece of vinyl down and then trim it off after the vinyl is laid down, like up against your handle. What I decided to do is just cut off anything that went up that was going to show the gap. So I trimmed it really, really short so it just meets underneath that handle. And then I took the middle piece and just slid it under the handle like normal. And I'm going to lay this down and then I'll kind of trim around these butterflies. Like I said, this is a kind of easy pattern to make look seamless. And I just cut around the butterflies and try to carve out any white space so that it doesn't look like we've got butterflies with a white outline laying over each other. It ended up totally looking fine. I left a few pieces where there's white overlay, but this is totally up to you. If you want to go and kind of trim around, you can, or you can just leave it. It all depends on the pattern that you're working with. So then after I had everything down, I went and finished the top of the cup how I normally do. So I'll push that vinyl up over the top rim pretty tight to make sure we don't have any bubbles or lifting. And then I'll trim off the excess and then take my X-Acto knife after I've got all the excess off and hold it at a 45-degree angle to get all of that excess little vinyl. So here I am kind of taking pieces from my vinyl scraps from my pattern and placing them to hide my seam a little bit. That's one thing I really like about these patterns that have just a plain white background. You can kind of patch things up, and I didn't do the best job, but you can kind of patch things up and make things look really seamless. Then I'm going to take my craft knife and very slowly trim that top edge of the tape, so the bottom edge of my vinyl, to get rid of all that excess so that our top butterfly vinyl meets up perfectly with our bottom wood pattern vinyl. You want to go as slow as you possibly can with this. I know, I mean, I never cut straight, but the slower you go, it's a little bit easier and you can make it pretty seamless. So I cut a little not straight and then I fixed it, but I just laid that piece down, you can't even tell. And if you kind of mess up a little, we're going to add a vinyl stripe here after, so don't worry about being absolutely perfect. Just do your best to make sure that it's straight and that you don't have any huge gaps of stainless steel in between your two vinyl patterns. I'm going to add my vinyl stripe right now, like immediately after applying the vinyl, because I'm using a textured metallic vinyl and you won't be able to see any of the vinyl ridges or anything underneath. If you're going to use a regular vinyl, like just a plain like Oracal 651 or another type of chrome vinyl, I would do a coat of epoxy and then come back and add your striping. If you're going to use textured vinyl like I am, you can go right in and just add the stripe right away. When I get to the handle, I added the stripe like normal, and then when I get to the handle, I cut a little sliver of that stripe in half and just place it underneath the handle so everything looks seamless. Then once I've got that on there, I'm going to seal with a coat of Quick Coat from Counterculture DIY. This helps seal in your vinyl and prepare it for epoxy. So if you add anything on top of your epoxy layer and you need to lift it off, like your tape or anything like that, you're not going to pull up the epoxy from your vinyl. So it really helps adhere the epoxy to your vinyl so you don't get any problems later. I'm going to add 2 coats of epoxy to my cup. The first one was about 20 milliliters and the second one was about 10 milliliters. After that cured, I sanded down the handle to make sure it was smooth, and I sanded the bottom a little bit too. And then we're going to add our decal. So I'm using this Stickercal from BAMF Custom Creations, and this is a decal that should show through like on a lighter base. So on a plain white base, this would show just fine, but because this background is a little bit busier, it wouldn't pop as much as I wanted it to. So I'm going to put it on a regular Oracal 651 white vinyl and kind of make it like a white back sticker. So I'm taking the Stickercal and I'm taking my pencil and tracing the outline of the sticker onto my vinyl so I can cut it out. In hindsight, the easier way to do this would probably be to stick the Stickercal down onto just the regular vinyl and then cut it out while it was on there and just like cut around the already placed Stickercal. I don't know why this made more sense in my head to try to do it this way, but I would just stick it down onto your vinyl and then cut out the shape after it's already stuck down, because this was kind of difficult to line up and get perfect, but whatever, it was fine. So then after I had it placed, because I didn't cut it out perfectly, I trimmed around the sticker just a little bit more so we didn't have any gapping or borders or lines, anything like that. So I ended up trimming it while it was already placed anyway. Once I had that done, I just applied it to the cup like a sticker. I didn't measure or make sure it was perfectly placed or anything. I just kind of eyeballed it. There's not a lot of like lines and symmetry and everything in the butterfly pattern, so I was comfortable just laying it down where I thought it looked the best. To finish the bottom of the cup, we're going to cut out a circle from that same wood pattern vinyl that we used to wrap the bottom of the cup. So I'm taking my ruler and measuring how big I need my circle to be, and it's about 2.75 inches. So I'm going to just make a circle in Silhouette Studio and cut that out. And then for the handle, we're going to apply the same butterfly pattern vinyl onto the handle. So here's my circle that I cut out, and I'm just going to place this down like a sticker. If you're more comfortable using transfer tape and doing it that way, you totally can. I did have a few areas where I had a tiny little bit of gapping just from my inconsistent cutting, like when I trimmed the excess vinyl off when we applied the vinyl. So what I'm going to do is apply this wood vinyl to the bottom, and then I'm going to take some paint pens from Arteza and just going to kind of fill in those gaps with the paint pen. So I ended up taking yellow ochre and brown, and I just kind of painted wherever there was a little bit of stainless steel peeking through, and it ended up blending seamlessly. You can't even tell that there were any holes or patches or anything before. Sorry this is kind of out of frame. I was really concentrating and looking at this very closely. But here it is. Here's the bottom all finished. You literally cannot even tell if there were any gaps. And then for the handle, I kind of I don't know what I was thinking that this would do or how this would work, but I ended up taping the handle off and painting it white, which you do not need to do. If I could go back and do this over again, I would not even bother painting the handle white, because we're going to wrap the vinyl around the front of the handle and the inside part of the vinyl. So when I applied the vinyl to the handle, it just kind of peeled up all the paint as I tried to trim the excess off. So painting the handle white was absolutely not necessary. In my next video, I'm going to go into detail on how I apply the vinyl to the handle, and I don't paint it first, so it'll be a better explanation. But anyway, after I trimmed off all the excess, I obviously trimmed off all the paint, so I decided to go in with a bronze paint pen from Arteza, and I just painted in or colored in with this paint marker those sides of the handle. So wherever I peeled up the paint, I just kind of painted that in and filled it in with the bronze, and it ended up kind of tying the bottom into the handle and the top portion a little bit more, and I really like how that turned out. So that was kind of a happy accident. It gave it a little bit more dimension and kind of tied everything together. Once I was done filling in the handle sides, I let that paint dry about 30 to 45 minutes, and then I went in with my final coats of epoxy. So this first last coat was about 15 milliliters, and then the final coat was about 10 milliliters. And for my epoxy, I always use a little extra ink epoxy. So make sure when you're applying your epoxy that you spend quite a bit of time on the handle. You want to make sure you don't have any lumps, bumps, clumps, anything like that on your handle. You want to make sure you have a really smooth, even, thin layer. So after our final coats of epoxy were all cured, the cup is all done. So here is the final result. I really love how this turned out despite the little stumbles along the way. So I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to give it a big ol' thumbs up, and please subscribe to our channel if you are not already so you don't miss any new videos. We upload every single Tuesday and Saturday, along with some bonus videos every now and then. Thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, love you. Bye.